This episode is brought to you by Camilla Najat with Exit Realty Metro.
Camilla Najat is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients. Camilla can help you with a comparative market analysis to help determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work with you at your pace.
You can reach Camilla by calling 902-880-8429 or email camilla@exitmetro.ca.
Also, you can find her on Facebook at Camilla Najat, Exit Realty Metro.
This is Matt Conrad.
And this is Mike Tobin.
Welcome to the Afternoon Pint.
This week we speak with the fascinating second-generation hypnotist, impossiblist, inventor, and world-class stage effects designer, Ty Reveen. Ty is back for a Canada-wide tour to continue his destined family legacy. It was a pleasure meeting Ty, and we strongly encourage you to check him out on his new 2023 tour that he dedicates to his mother, Coral Reveen. Enjoy.
Cheers. Got our pints, and here we go.
Yes. So we're here with Ty Reveen, which I'm really happy to have you here.
Very excited.
Like, this is really cool. It was one of those ones where you're like, I saw an ad for your show coming to Halifax, and I put that out in the world. I'm like, man, I think that guy'd be a cool guest. And I wrote you, and lo and behold, you got back to me pretty quickly.
I'm honored to be part of the Afternoon Pint.
Yeah. So
thank you.
I'm Mike Tobin.
Matt Conrad?
Yeah. So what brings you to town?
Well, you guys, nice to be on your show. I was willing to travel. No, I'm here to pick up my stage manager. We have a tour coming up, but we're playing Halifax and doing some shows in the East Coast, and then we fly to Vegas. My daughter's getting married, and then we pick her up and we go out west, and we're playing all over the West Coast and the tour at the great casino in Vancouver, the River Rock Casino, and go and have some time off after that.
Amazing. Yeah. So a Canada-wide tour.
Yeah, coast to coast. I'm going to Newfoundland. The show's already sold out there. 1,000 tickets. Went really fast. I could have done a second show, but my mother passed away, and I just didn't have time to put it. I went down to see her in Vegas August 1st, and 3 weeks after I arrived, she passed away, which was an unexpected shock and real heartbreaking experience. I've lost both of my parents, and but she was the backbone of the show, so I'm dedicating this tour to her coast to coast. She was a great woman, a great mother, a perfect road mother. She liked to be in show business from a young girl. She used to be in the Tivoli Theater, and that's where my father and mother met, and she was a assistant.
Where was the Tivoli Theater store?
That was in Melbourne.
Okay, yeah, Melbourne, Australia, right?
Yeah. And my father, he had all these magic shows on the tent circuit and stuff like that, and he was developing his hypnotic show, and she liked to be involved in show business, and he thought she was the right size to fit in a bunch of boxes and trapdoors, secret tunnels, and hidden passages, and she just fulfilled. They fell in love, and they were the perfect match for each other.
It's amazing.
Yeah, beautiful story.
Yeah.
So our condolences to your
Thank you.
To you and your family.
It's a great loss to all of us.
Yeah, I can imagine. And honestly, I guess that even goes even further for thank you for reaching out to us, because we know it was shortly after that, and you reached out to us so quickly. So that's very generous of you. So thank you.
Well, I'm happy to share her story, because she was, like I said, she was the backbone of my father's success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so did he get into the hypnotism thing himself, and she work with him on it, or how did he discover hypnotism?
He really got into. He was an entertainer since he was a young boy.
Yeah.
Doing magic shows for his kids at school. And his story started off, it was kind of a tragic story where his mother abandoned him at the age of 5, and he blamed himself for it because his father decided with his mates at the pub that they're going to go and kick the Nazis' ass and let's go and, give him some Australian whoop ass. And his mother he didn't talked to his wife before he made that decision, and it caused tremendous conflict. And she said, I didn't sign up for this. By that time, my father was almost 5 years old, not quite. And then she said, let your grandma take care of,
No way.
his mother take care of the son, Peter, and she was off. And he blamed himself for it. And he suffered tremendously as a result of that rejection. And he thought maybe I wasn't a good son. And he started having a passion for entertainment. And he went to see a magic show when he was a very small boy. And he went into a magic shop in Melbourne, and this gentleman said, I'm going to show you a few tricks, and if you're interested, I'm going to sell you one, and you go home and practice it and come back and show me you can do it really good, and I'll sell you another one. So he showed him the trick, and my father was blown away. So he went home and he practiced it hundreds of times before he showed anybody, and he came back and he really impressed the guy at Bernard's Magic Shop in Melbourne. And he sold him more tricks, and he started becoming very good at it. And then he would do it at his schools and impress the students, which gave him a lot of attention. And then the children's parents would say, oh, you're such a clever young man. Why don't you come to our party, Billy's birthday party, and do a few things? And he'd say, well, I could use a few coins to go and buy some more tricks. So they would pay him, and he developed his little routine and became very good at what he did. And his parents, or the parents of his mates, would say, oh my gosh, you're tremendous. Your parents must be very proud of you. And little did they know, when his dad came back from the war, his best friend got shot in the head on the first day of battle, and all of his mates pretty well got wounded or killed. And he started drinking when he came home, and his life was never the same. So he adopted.
His father wasn't really cool with all the magic stuff, or
no, I think
your grandfather.
War does terrible things to people, good people,
I can only imagine,
and it rips the heart out of you. And it was hard for him to express his love to my dad, because he
PTSD,
lost so much, being at the war and seeing all of his friends get killed. And he became emotionally separated from, really communicating that love. So my father subconsciously adopted his audiences as being his surrogate parents. And he really studied what he did, and he found out whatever impressed, people that admired him, he would do. He would put a lot of time into the development of his skills to attract people like that. And he developed his ability to memorize things at a capacity that I've never known, and nor do I know anybody in the history of show business that has ever seen anybody with the capacity of memory like my father did. He had photographic memory, and I'm sure there's some people in Russia in an apartment building that nobody knows about that has the abilities that he had.
Yeah.
But he was unquestionably the most brilliant mind, had the most brilliant memory of anybody in the history of show business, and everybody in the magic industry knew that, anybody who met him. And if you go online and type in Reveen deck of cards, did a high-speed memorization on stage at the very beginning of the show of 52 cards, and he'd call the sequence out from 1 to 52 at high speed and do it in reverse, and ask people to call out any hand in poker. And he said, well, then you need the ace of clubs on 51, and then you'll need the jack of clubs on 41, and
Crazy.
he'd go right down, and he'd do it in high speed, faster than I could even think.
So he wasn't allowed in any casinos at all. Then.
No, as a matter of fact, we worked in casinos, and we worked for the mob in Vegas back in the 70s, and he was politely asked never to gamble there.
Yeah, for sure.
We went to see the Jackson 5 back when it was at the MGM Hotel, and Janet Jackson, it was their first day on stage, and I've got a picture.
Did you say Janet Jackson?
Yeah.
Cool.
And they brought her up from the audience, and it was her very first time on stage with the Jackson 5. And after that, he went out to the casino at the MGM, and within minutes, because he could memorize, right? Yeah. He was a card counter. Didn't take more than 5 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes for the house to notice that he went from $2 to $1,800 really fast.
Wow.
And then by that time, excuse me, Mr. Reveen, because we were playing at the Caesar's Palace, and we were playing at the Tropicana at the Folies Bergère. We had the starring Magic Act. And so they knew him. And they are like, we appreciate you coming here, but your money is not welcome on our gambling tables. And then from that moment on, he was, blackballed to gamble at all anywhere in Las Vegas.
Amazing.
Yeah, but...
So your father growing up essentially, without a mentor, which I imagine is exceptionally hard to do in the illusionist magician world, because the whole thing is don't tell your magician doesn't tell us his secrets, right? Mm-hmm. How does someone learn how to do these tricks on their own? Where would you find these things?
Well, when you go to magic stores, they show you tricks, and you say, wow, I would like to know how to do that. And you read up on it, but he had a passion for reading and studying. And then he came across an article on hypnotism from a dentist who got rid of pain. And he thought, well,
what?
I'm in a lot of pain. And this is back in the
From
days.
his own personal life, you mean? He was in a lot of pain? Or?
Yeah, emotionally.
Yeah.
Really bad, deep emotional pain as a result of the rejection from his mother.
Right.
And who wasn't a bad woman, but she was just young and over her head, taking and concerned that his father wasn't going to come back, and she was pretty close to right because most of his friends got wiped out. Yeah. And didn't want to be the burden of a single mother, and and was just outraged that he made that decision without...
That's how the hypnotism kind of came.
Well, he started reading about these... he read nothing but medical manuscripts on the science of hypnotic suggestion and how it traced back from Anton Mesmer to doctors and physicians like Dr. Ellison, Dr. Esdale, Dr. Braid, and studied all these medical manuscripts on the science of applied suggestion. And he knew it from a scientific-based thing, not from Hollywood, where they have all these movies with Orson Welles and Bela Lugosi and all the key role actors in its day, Boris Karloff, and they all depicted a hypnotist as some bent psychopath that destroyed everything in their path.
Was there more controversy in his time with hypnosis? And people thinking it was like the devil
totally
and evil
taboo everywhere he went, and he was just outraged. He only understood it from a scientific application of the tremendous things that they were able to do. Like back in the day that Anton Mesmer did it, he came across a bucket of magnets from one of the ships that came into port, and he's like, what is this? And this is magnetized iron, or bucket of magnets. And they're like, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, the guy said, take these 2 steel poles in your hand and slowly put it towards those buckets, and all of a sudden, boom! And like, oh my gosh! And he pulls it back and he tries it again, boom! And he immediately thought that magnets can get rid of your pain. And he was mentally convinced of that. And he saw the immediate therapeutic value in this thing, so he bought it, and he seeked out more, that they would come back and bring back some more of this property that he came across, and then he convinced, but this is back in the days where anesthetic drugs were very hard to find, and they didn't really have them for applying for pain,
Right.
even though opiates were used for rich people to get high on, but they didn't really have it, an understanding of using it for local anesthetics or things like that. So he convinced his subjects that were people that had to get their amputations or, from gangrene or something back then. If you got an infection, they would cut it off.
Yeah.
And the chance of survival back then was about 50-50, literally a flip of the coin, whether you're going to live or die from the surgery. Even if you got your hand cut off, you could bleed to death. A lot of people would go in there and they would drink alcohol before the surgery, not knowing that their blood wasn't coagulating
Right.
as a result of the alcohol, and they would bleed to death. And some would get hit by a boxer before it started and knock them out, and then they'd go and do the surgery. But not only are you trying to heal from being beaten up by a boxer, but having the amputation. And so it was literally a flip of the coin. So Anton Mesmer came on the scene, absolutely, completely convinced that these magnets were going to suck the nerves out of the people prior to surgery. And he convinced them so much that it had the power of his presentation, convincing them that it was going to happen.
Right.
And they didn't know what he was talking about, but they're like looking at him with teary eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to believe you. And he'd say, take these, and he'd bring him into the operating theater. He'd say, take these steel bars and put it slowly towards this bucket, and it will take your nerves out of your body. And with teary eyes, they'd be trembling, and then boom, and their eyes would roll to the back of their head, and he'd push it into the pillow, and he'd go right in. Within seconds, the limb was cut off, and they bandaged them off, and they were in, they'd just go into a deep sleep. They'd wake up, totally mesmerized.
Yeah, that's great.
Excuse the pun, Anton mesmerized, right?
Yeah.
And they would say afterwards that they would swear that they didn't feel any pain during the surgeries. And their success rating, the survival rating, went from like 50-50 to like 95% of the people were living after the surgeries. And so he drew a lot of attention from a lot of different people in the medical community that he had unlocked some kind of great secret. And as he started selling his magnets to other doctors, what he didn't tell them and what he didn't realize that it was his presentation of the power of suggestion that was really making it work. So they, not knowing to hype these people up about it, would try it, and they were getting the same results.
Uncertainty that you're not thinking about anything else but those magnets.
So, he started attracting a lot of attention, and a lot of doctors were very upset that they were losing their patients because everybody wanted to go to Mesmer and have them do the surgeries. And so they put together a board of people that analyzed what was going on, and Benjamin Franklin was one of those people that were analyzing it, and they came up to the conclusion that this has nothing to do with the magnets. It's his presentation. He's convincing them of it. So
placebo, basically.
Yeah, it was purely his presentation. But ironically, he had a foresight that magnets were involved in the healing, and now all these electromagnetic, MRIs that are used, as well as all kinds of there's all kinds of medical tools that get rid of diseases with electromagnetic frequencies.
Amazing.
But he had that foresight, but didn't understand enough about the science of it to exploit it to its proper thing. But he was the man that foresaw that magnets would be heavily involved in healing people.
It's amazing.
So back to the kind of the hypnosis thing. Like, do you believe that everyone can be hypnotized, or do you feel that like some people just can't? Is there something in someone's head that?
Well, it does. It does entitle a cooperation between the subject and the hypnotist, no question about it. But when people come up to me and say, I can't be hypnotized, I kind of chuckle at it, because every time you go into a store and you're going down an aisle and you choose product A over product B,
Right.
that is happening as a result of suggestion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the subject of hypnotism is a vital science. The principles of hypnotism have been used both for us and against us in so many ways over the years that my family and myself and hundreds or thousands of doctors, physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists really feel that people should know what it is and what it is not, because it is being damned out of all context from Hollywood movies and the likeness of that, and Columbo shows, and of that really clouds.
But meanwhile, it's Instagram. It's everything around you. You're being hypnotized. Everything.
And
you
they
look
always say, "Oh, these people are hypnotized." Well, hypnosis means many things to many people, and that's why my father kind of switched it around to talk about it as a superconscious state, because it has been damned out of all context, which really hides the great work that it can do, and it's been given credit for doing things that it cannot do. And just the word hypnosis is from the Greek word hypnos, which means to sleep, but it isn't a sleep state when you go into surgery and stuff like that. It's a very conscious state, but your mind is in a different realm of which is highly susceptible, and people in the Far East understand that meditation, which they're very able to be placed into a hypnotic state and have amputations and invasive surgeries that don't affect them like they do people in the West.
That's fascinating.
It is. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
So my father, he dedicated his life to a greater understanding of the human mind based on the science of applied suggestion. And the repetition of suggestion has a hypnotic effect. And it could be used both for us and against us in so many ways. It could be both used for good and bad. And the people in Madison Avenue and they understand that, politicians understand that. They always try to angle their ads for vote for me based on emotions and stuff like that, and kind of get people think, oh yeah, it's he's saying all the things that I want to hear. I think he understands me, but it's kind of like reading a fortune cookie. It's so general that everybody think, oh my gosh, how do they know?
I'll be like, how doesn't that fortune cookie apply to you? They apply to everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so I guess let's kind of like all fascinating stuff in the history and the psychology behind it, but let's talk a little bit about the act and like your performance that you do. And I mean, you obviously got into it. You said, at a young age, you helped out your father. Obviously, that's how you got involved into this.
All of us kids, my three brothers, we were all born in the middle of a Reveen tour.
Right.
Starting
Which,
in
by the way, I
Australia.
remember these commercials when I was a kid.
Oh, totally.
And just being like, holy crap, that's awesome.
They're in my mind forever. The Reveen commercials that were on cable TV. I'd be sitting on the floor watching TV.
The man they call Reveen. I remember coming over from Australia. I was like 13 years old, and I was going to high school there, and I was the youngest kid in the high school because we had higher education standards in Australia than they did in the United States. My dad convinced them to put me in grade 10 when I was the youngest kid and second smallest because there was a midget. But not that I grew into myself later, but people would see me, and I kind of stood out because I was young, and they'd say, hey, kid, elementary school's that way, and make these things. But no, that's Reveen's son. And they as I'm walking down, the man they call Reveen, it's one of the most clever jingles that has ever been written. Yeah. And it was written for my dad back in the early 60s when the Beatles first showed up. So
was it written in the 60s?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so it really stuck with us. And it's
earworm,
done tremendous things to our career over the years.
But it's a family show, and it's still a family show. And I think that's something that's like hugely important today. Like, I'm excited to take our 11-year-old there in a couple of weeks.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. I mean,
'cause they have no idea what they're walking into. And
Yeah.
I love it when I just hit them with the surprise thing. And they're like, this is going to, I think, rock her.
change the way you think
change her
forever, and it
perspective.
really does,
Yeah.
because when we're born, we're not told how to use our mind. It's kind of like a computer without the software.
Right.
And once you learn that you can control it and program it with the proper thinking, where you can do anything, because the very nature of our mind is controlled to the most part by our conscious thinking. Now, conscious thinking is negative in its natural ways. It
Well, it's
convinces
survival, right? It's your prime to survive,
Exactly.
so
Well,
you
it's
fear
necessary
everything.
because it allows you, or makes so that you don't use your allow your self-confidence to override your common sense. It's
Right.
kind of holding you back and saying, why do that when you could do something safer, stay in your safety zone, or where the true powerhouse of the mind that has the ability to take you anywhere you want to go is in the superconscious state, the subconscious state. And so you have to get past the conscious thinking. So what we do on stage is we put everybody in a deep state of relaxation through a series of consecutive positive suggestions. And then we introduce the positive suggestions. And when this state occurs, when the suggestion process is embraced, your mind can be freed from the shackles of negative conditioning that has accumulated in all of our minds since the year we were born. And once your mind is being liberated from the shackles of your negative and self-conscious fears, you can talk ordinary people into doing extraordinary things and guide them into a spotlight, things that they never thought they'd have the courage to do, and do tremendous performances at a level that most people just didn't believe was possible. After the show, we have people coming up to us and saying, "Oh my gosh, I never knew my father or my brother or my sister, or my mother had these abilities
I've seen friends,
to do
like
it."
close friends hypnotized are so
Totally
kind of
into
straight-edge,
that
tough
moment,
guys.
and without interruption of thought, they are so deep into
change.
it, and it's like
Transform. It's amazing.
it's like we had no idea they had this personality inside them. But one thing my father discovered at a very early age is genetic inheritance. He thought he discovered reincarnation, proof of reincarnation, by taking this young boy when he was in Fiji, hypnotized this tribal elder's son, and he wanted to see that if he could go back and
Talk to ancestors. through
well,
his
he
mind.
wanted to know if he could tap back into India, because he wasn't born in India. He'd never been to India. He didn't know how to speak Hindu, and there's like 3 different languages mostly predominant in India. And in the stage of a superconscious session, he started talking a language that was totally unknown to him. And it wasn't the language that his father learned that he didn't. He wanted his son to grow up and have a better future, so he taught him English. But as he's talking this foreign language, the father of this young man started, "Oh my gosh, that's my father talking to me." He said he never heard this language. He's never heard it. He's speaking it fluent. That's Daddy. He started, "Papa, it's me." And my dad's kind of holding him back. And this young boy or young man who starts talking fluently, and he convinced himself that he had proven reincarnation. But after talking to several doctors, like this brilliant Indian doctor whose name was Dr. Mukuchi, he said, "No, Peter, what you've discovered is reincarnation, or not reincarnation, but it's genetic memory. That everything that happens in our past lives is recorded, everything of significant value. So if your ancestors studied music, or they studied mathematics, or they studied any kind of disciplines that were out of the normal, those traits are embedded in their DNA and passed on
down.
to us."
Yeah, little tiny blocks back in the memory.
Yeah,
You can
so
never even open.
Everything that
almost, like,
happens
yeah.
in our life, to the most part, that is of significant value, is stored somewhere in our memory banks, and we can tap into that through states of relaxation. And I've heard interviews with some very big names in the music industry, from Barry Manilow to Billy Joel, and they were saying, "Oh, my mother used to make us study music," and they were both saying the same story. Really, it's like, I hated piano lessons and doing the scales and stuff, and then
Right.
one day they just woke up and they're kind of looking at their hands with amazement, like, "Oh my gosh,
The
it's
magic's unlocked."
You know,
Yeah.
and they start doing things they never had the ability to do, and it just comes. But what happens is they tap into genetic memory of the ancestors that lived before us, and it's an amazing field of study.
That is amazing. Yeah, it's. I've never really even, I guess, heard about that. Kind of makes me want to go.
My
into a little
father
bit
was
more
one of
about
the
it.
first people to really bring it out, because they talk about in high school, and they talk about biology, where it's alternation of generation. We have these genetic inheritance that on the physical attributes that, you look like your father, and people say, I look like my dad. And I go, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
You know, give them that look, and they, oh my gosh, you're a splitting image of it.
Yeah.
But it's usually in biology, it's called alternation of generation. It frequently follows the grandfather to the grandson. In biology, they call it alternation of generation, where goldfish will have the exact same patterns in every second generation and things like that. But they never talk about the mental attributes that come with it, and that we are the reflection of genetic inheritance from hundreds and hundreds of people that came before us. And we take with us their traits that were passed on through the DNA, and we can those natural talents can come into the natural attitudes and things that all of a sudden, you got a personality. You don't know where it came from, And
What's really interesting, and this is down a path that I never thought we'd really go, I guess, because obviously your dad was known for his act and known for the entertainment value and everything, but clearly what was a passion of his was this kind of a pseudo science, I guess, for lack of
it
better
was
words,
all
kind of.
based on the scientific applications and 200 years of studying medical manuscripts.
Yeah.
And by the time he was 36 years old, he was considered the foremost authority on the state of hypnotism. And we got into the United States on a deal that happened through the Gerald Fassbender was our immigrations officer, and my father, with cooperation of the University of Utah, had made an agreement that they would let us into the country on H-1 visas, which were diplomatic visas usually given to surgeons and stuff like that, and diplomats,
Wow. Really?
on the condition that he would teach the doctors in the medical profession how to apply the superconscious state or the hypnotic state using
You
his
think you would have
methods.
just hypnotized them? Sorry,
Perhaps he did.
Cheap joke. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he did do that.
We were joking on the way up the highway. Matt was like, "Why is all the traffic in the right lane?" I'm like, "That's Reveen, man. He's pushing that all this way so he can get ahead of us." Yeah,
But they did tremendous things that, he dedicated. He went off the road for 8 months, and he just studied with these doctors and did tremendous work.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess kind of going back.
So
to the
this
show.
is what I guess what we're saying is it's more than just stage entertainment
Absolutely.
hypnotism.
It definitely seems that. It
But
definitely seems that
the
way.
Reveen show is based on medical manuscripts and the scientific application of hundreds of years that were learned from the application of medicine.
It's amazing.
So let's I guess now going back. So you have a show coming up, and are these some of the are they some of the like the classic stuff that your father, like, it's a lot of stuff from his show, or are you developing new things and on top of that, how do you come up with new things?
Well, when we were growing up, we would see things on TV like the Beatles, right? And say, Dad, you got to have the Beatles in the show. You know, we would watching Our Favorite Martian. Dad, you got to have a Martian routine in the show, and your dad, you got to do the Monsters, and all these TV shows that we'd watch. We'd have him. We'd encourage him to figure out routines, and he did. And then we've kind of developed it as a family. We all played our little roles in the development of that show. And, of course, I keep some of the strongest stuff, but there's 11, 12 hours worth of material there that we've developed over many, many years. And I try to keep all the timeless classics in the shows and put my own spin on it, my own personality.
For sure, yeah.
And start off the show with a high-speed memory demonstration that is one of the prerequisites that my father said that I had to do in order to get his tuxedo. And at the time, I thought, Dad, you got, your memory is,
Yeah, that'd be intimidating.
I can't do that. He said, yes, you can, and you will. And he encouraged me to work at it. And so, I would never attempt that high-speed memorizing the deck of cards, but he did encourage me to do some pretty amazing things.
Now, do you have a lineage that you hope to pass this down to yourself? Or?
Oh, yeah. I want to keep it going.
Yeah.
He told me at the age of 5 that I would one day take over the show, and it took me a long time to tap into that, because he already told me all my life that he would told all of us kids that we were really creative. We were created by a creator, and the creator created us in his own image, which was to be creators. And kind of thought about it, and I thought, I am creative, and I'd make my own toys with elastic bands and pieces of junk, and I think, that's cool, and growing up. And then I started noticing when I was in my teens, the late teens and early 20s, that a lot of the rock and rollers were hiring magicians to come up with ideas for their rock shows to make it more exciting. Yeah. I'm talking about Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Michael Jackson, and Alice Cooper.
So you started working with some of these acts, right?
Yeah. Well, I thought, wait a second. We've spent literally millions of dollars in the development of some of the biggest magic shows in the world.
Yeah.
I know all the secrets. I know all the builders. I know all the gimmicks, and all I have to do is come up with ways to, put it into their show. And I didn't really have any ideas, but I was confident that I could pull this off, just as confident as anybody could be. So I told Dad at the end of 1984, I said, I want to throw my hat into that ring. And he said, well, okay, you're going to have to be really creative about it. You're going to have to get their attention by pitching some ideas. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I didn't have any ideas. I wasn't born with any kind of gifts that were well beyond anybody average person. I didn't have a creative disposition that was any different from anybody, other than believing in myself that I could do it if I really wanted to do it. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And so a few months later, after retiring from a show and just sitting there and coming up with some ideas and writing a few things on paper, I met up with Billy Gibbons at a friend's birthday, or at a friend's house party. And he said, hey, you want to meet Billy Gibbons? And I'm like, ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons? That Eliminator tour, I was a huge fan. It was when I came over from Australia, the first show I saw in Salt Lake City was the Wild Texas tour, with the bull on stage and a rattlesnake in a glass cage at the front of the stage, and the big Texas tour and Tush and all that, those big hits. And I'm like, so I was a big ZZ Top fan from way back then. And then I walked around the corner. I said, hey, Billy. I said, I'm your biggest fan, and I'm the best designer in special effects magic for rock shows. Awesome. He kind of leaned his head back, and he said, well, it sounds pretty interesting. Maybe we've got something to talk about. So I said, yeah, we could use all kinds of different techniques to make your magic or the magic of your music come alive in a visual way that. And he said, "Well, okay, let's talk about it." So we talked about it that night, and then he said, "Come over to my place at the I'm staying at the Tropicana on the 7th floor," and gave me. I knocked. He said, "Meet me there at 2:00." I knocked on his door, and the door opens, and he hands me one of those ZZ Top keychains, you see on. And I think, "Wow, that's cool." Thanks,
cool.
man. He put his hat on me and stuff like that, and I started talking about different things that we could think about. And I said, "Why don't we go over to see some of the shows here?" I know back then I knew every pit boss and every theater manager in that city. It was only 250,000 people, and we'd done hundreds of shows there. And so I took him to shows like Splash and Hallelujah Hollywood and the Lido Show and the Folies Bergère and stuff like that. And, we were just watching stuff, and he'd point out, "Yeah, I like that idea." And I think, "Yeah, that looked pretty cool on your stage." And he's like, took him to Splash, and he's like, "Oh, I love the dancing waters. I want to do that." And he's like, "You know what? That would look really cool with your music. But I'm telling you, man, you've got to consider what it's going to take that on the road. You're going to need 2 units because it's going to be the first truck is going to drop off those big tanks that hold that stuff, and it's going to be
How many
the
trucks do you
last
want to
thing."
take around
He's
with
like,
you
"Yeah,
around
you're
the
going to
country?"
need 2 different rigs doing leapfrog from one city to another." And so I said, and there's going to be water everywhere, and we're going to have fire trucks in there, and it's going to just cost you a fortune. The unions are going to kill you with this one. I said, "I wouldn't do it with this. I wouldn't do it if I were you." And he realized, like, you seem to be a very clever guy. You obviously know a lot about magic, but more so you understand the logistics of traveling a show. Right. I said, "Well, we've lost houses over making some bad decisions with big magic shows, Yeah. And so all those combinations of the sacrifices that we made over the years had accumulated to make me really understand. Because anybody said, "Yeah, we could do that," and all of a sudden they get the bill for it, and then he said, "This was a stupid idea, man. Do you realize how much this thing's costing us?" Yeah. So I kind of was able to balance it out. What's high impact? What is high impact special effects? And at the same time, roadworthy and cost effective. And so at the end of our little meeting over 3 days, he, I said, "So what do you got in mind? Do you have a theme for your album?" And he said, "No, we just write music and we do a good job of it. We like to make our shows exciting, and I don't know particularly what I want, but I know what I like when I see it." And he threw the ball back in my court, and he said, "Show me what you've got." So I started thinking about it and came up with this idea that his car should be, or that his last album was the Eliminator. And so I found somebody with a car just like that, exact same car in a junkyard, man. And
in the junkyard.
Yeah. And took a photograph of it and made a big dashboard of it. And I'd been working on a proposition for a band called Loverboy.
Oh. Okay.
Which is like amazing music from our Canadian brothers
Yeah.
in Loverboy, man. And I met up with the band after we did a show in Vancouver, and I was selling myself to them at a party they were having, and pulled out this fireball shooter, and I shoot it across the nightclub, and nobody knew where it came from, and they were like,
what
"Whoa!"
was it, like a flare gun or something? Or?
Well, it was just this little pin I made with flash paper that shot at a fireball. And they, "Man, that was cool." I said, "Yeah, I could put it on the end of your guitars, and we could do all kinds of wild stuff." And so the security's like running, "Do you guys see where did that come from?" And we're all laughing and kind of pointing at the lights. "I think it was from that light over there." And anyway, we had a good time, and I said, I'm going to start designing stuff for rock shows. Why don't you give me a show? And they said, "Okay, stay in touch with Matt's, the drummer's roadie," and I kept on calling him from Las Vegas, and he said, "Yeah, this is what they're doing, and they're putting the final edges on the album." And I said, "Well, what's it about?" And he said, "Well, they're just writing a bunch of cool songs. And I said, well, give me some lyrics. And he said, the main song is going to be touch that button, turn that dial, turn me on like a rocket ship, loving every minute of it.
Yeah.
And so that's all he had to say, and I thought, okay, well, maybe the stage should be a big, giant dashboard of a rocket ship, And then so they ended up going their own direction with some Hollywood producers. Forget about that kid. He doesn't know. We'll do it for you. And so they kind of were gravitated to following the direction of somebody else. And then so when I met up with Billy Gibbons, I thought, well, let's start off with a 40-foot wide dashboard of a 1933 car. We'll put Billy in front of the drivers in front of the steering wheel. We'll put Dusty in front of the glove box. We'll put Frank on the radio, on top of the radio. Halfway through the show, we'll turn it into a rocket ship, and then we'll take their entire audience on a simulated trip into outer space.
It sounds crazy. I wish I could see
so
it.
I pitched that to the band. I made a bunch of different storyboards, and I made some models and stuff like that, and I showed them, and they were kind of blown away with it, and they liked it. But the manager was kind of putting me through the test on it, and he said, I don't know. It's very colorful, and it's kind of cool, but, what does little old band from Texas have anything to do with, rocket ships? I said, are you kidding? Here we are in Houston, Texas, where you have the biggest space center in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
I said, you guys have more territorial rights over outer space than any other rock band. And I said, it's never been exploited before. I'm telling you, this is a hot idea. And the band kind of jumped up and they were kind of high-fiving each other like, yeah, I like this. So I came up with all of a bunch of special effects plus the stage. And then we covered the stage with a big white stage cloth at the beginning. And I said, we have a big head of a longhorn bull come down there and snort that curtain up its nose like at 90 miles an hour. You can do that? And I said, yeah, I can. And they, you have to see it to believe it. So they made a model, and I went and proved that I could do it. And that head from a longhorn bull turned into head of King Tut. And so that was like the opening of the show. The curtain I convinced him, put a curtain in front of the stage, and slowly drew back. And you saw this big head of King Tut with sunglasses, and the lasers came out of the eyes, and you hear this big snorting noise. And the whole stage cloth went right up the nose of this head of King Tut, and everybody, and they came out, got me under pressure. She likes cocaine. And the crowd went nuts. And everybody on MTV, Mark Goodman, was like, oh my gosh, don't miss the opening of ZZ Top's concert. It'll blow your mind. Don't miss it. And, by the time the show got to, I toured coast to coast with them. And by the time it got to, every city, they were chanting Sphinx, 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 anticipating it. And Rolling Stone magazine called it the greatest cocaine gag in the history of rock and roll. I don't think you could do that nowadays. But,
maybe not. You never know.
And so that really kind of launched my future in the entertainment industry. And then he said, I want 40 cannons coming out of the stage, and we had elevators and pneumatic lifts and smoke and spinning guitars in that built-in. There was no place to put any big cannon devices, so I needed to come up with a miniature cannon that would be. And so I remember having a life vest from flying so much, and I took it apart, and I thought, well, maybe this little release mechanism, if I put it in the bottom of a cannon, could do the work of a small confetti cannon. And tried it out, and I was just amazed at how well it worked. So I showed the band the final presentation. They were signing off on all the final art and everything we were doing for the show. And then Billy's like, okay, what about these cannons? I said, well, I got this. And I leaned over and I picked up this little tube. And Frank and Dusty are like, are you kidding, man? Come on, that's a toy. We're playing at 20,000-seat arenas. I said, well, just come out and let me, humor me if nothing else.
Right.
And they were rolling their eyes. And Billy said, let's go, man. You know, Ty's got some interesting ideas. So I went out there and I shot it off, and Billy like, oh my God, you got to patent that, dude. I'm telling you, you got to patent that.
Wow.
And it became one of the most successful special effects in the history of entertainment. It's
So
still to
you're
today.
still selling those, eh?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got 2 U.S. patents on it, and
Nice.
I invented the streamer cannon
Amazing.
out of that idea, and I.
So
and-
could anybody go buy a streamer cannon if they wanted to?
Yeah, go to Streamer Effects International at streamereffects.com. You know,
Streamereffects.com.
yeah, I do.
That's
I
awesome.
do dozens of the biggest bands in the world buy their confetti and streamers from us, from Kiss to you name it. I've
Wow.
done 3 world tours with Paul McCartney, 3 world tours with Madonna, Shakira, Christina Aguilera, J-Lo, 5 tours with Usher. I mean,
Amazing.
yeah, some of the Van Halen, you name it.
I've been to a Kiss concert. They go through a lot of streamers and pyrotechnics
Confetti.
and confetti. And,
Yeah, they're mostly pyrotechs and confetti. But yeah, I invented that whole industry of the streamers, and it really helped me raise a family. And
Yeah, obviously.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now, obviously, you're taking on your father's legacy. I'm guessing you probably he retired. What was it? He retired.
his last shows were in 2008
Okay, I knew it was
in the
something like
East
that.
Coast.
Yeah.
But he really stopped doing shows back in the 1990s, and he was responsible for the success of a magician in Las Vegas called Lance Burton, and then he kind of just got a bit lazy and left. Was living off a pretty profitable job down there, keeping an eye on that show and making it one of the top 10 shows in Las Vegas. And then he looks at me and he kind of starts tapping his watch and, you going to become Reveen or what?
So when did you officially become Reveen?
I had to go down and extensively audition for my father in 2011. And he put me through the drills like a drill sergeant,
Yeah,
and he wanted to make sure that I knew how to explain it and understand what it was all about.
Yeah.
And then he made me go to one of the biggest magic club there. And there was a show called Wonderground from Jeff McBride. Used to host it, and he made me do the high-speed memory demonstration. And there was like 200, some of the best magicians in the world were there. And I got a standing ovation, and he passed on my tuxedo, and I did some shows in Vegas in 2012, and then brought it across Canada, coast to coast, and now it's the biggest selling hypnotic show back like we used to be in the since the 1960s. We were always the biggest hypnotic show. Nobody was doing concert theater performances of hypnosis before my father. He was the only and first one to ever do it in a concert setting, where he took it to the theaters. Before it was in seedy nightclubs or back, all kinds of little halls and stuff like that. But he took it, made it a world-class entertainment, and now we're outgrossing any show of its type in coast to coast in Canada.
That's awesome. I hope it goes forever, man. I really do.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, why go see another hypnotist when you can see the actual one that made
The OG.
entertainment
The OG.
history?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you had a daughter. Is she interested in picking
Oh yeah,
up that
she's
cape?
like my star assistant. She's not on all of my tours, but she's in Las Vegas, and we're going to do some shows, and we're going to go down and pick her up in Las Vegas, and she's going to come on the road with us and be on the stage. And,
Nice. And is that the one getting married, you said?
Yeah.
You mentioned the wedding? Oh,
Right.
cool. That's awesome.
yeah, I've got a son, Alex, and then there's Maria and my little son, Taj, who's 22 now.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, just turned 22.
So this is like, not only is it a family show, but it's truly a family business. Like really generational family business.
Yeah, and I've got a grandson, so I'm teeing him up to be another generation of the Reveen. So there'll be a series of us.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So so we did talk a little bit. You said you try to keep a lot of it classic, a lot of the classic stuff. But do you come up with your own tricks, and how do you come up with a trick? Like that always fascinates me.
Well, I made this when I met Billy Gibbons. I went and immediately thought, I mean, here I am driving in a convertible downtown Las Vegas. I think a lot of people thought I was Frank Beard, with my little goatee there, and I'm sitting beside Billy with his beard flying in a convertible 1953 Bel Air convertible, and everybody's looking over. Oh my gosh, it's Billy Gibbons, CC Top, honking their horns and freaking out. And I thought, yeah, I want to be part of this. And so I went and rented myself a little warehouse, and I made this stage. I got a big picnic table, and I put a black cloth on it, and I built this little proscenium arch, and I had a bunch of velvet curtains made, and I made a stage, and I put a proscenium arch with a curtain, and I just looked inside that box, and I told my mind, what would it take to blow my mind? And I kept on asking my brain that question. I demanded that it answer me. Yeah. Kind of like Tesla, tapped into universal understanding of knowledge and stuff like that by just demanding it out of his mind and thinking about it enough. And after about 3 weeks, I had ideas popping up in my head, and I had to write them down. I think, oh my gosh. And sometimes they'd come 2 or 3 times a day, and I'd be writing and writing and writing. But it kind of reminds me of a story when my father was talking about his experiences with genetic memory. And we were at the Bill and Irene Larson, the people that were the creators of the Magic Castle. And my father was a founding member of the Magic Castle in Los Angeles. And we would frequently visit their house as we were growing up, because they were in our inner circle best friends, among the very best friends that we ever had. And they had the Sherman brothers were there that night. I'm talking about Richard and his brothers. The Sherman brothers wrote all those great classical soundtracks for Walt Disney.
Okay. Yep.
And my dad was talking about his experience with that young man from Fiji, and how he discovered that it was not reincarnation, but genetic memory. And all of a sudden, Richard Sherman jumped out of his chair and he said, "You've answered something for me." He said, when we were in the studio at Disneyland, and Walt was showing us the storyboards and describing all these scenes, he said, all of a sudden I hear this sound in my head, and I had to grab for a piece of paper, and I was writing down the music that was in my head. He said, I didn't create it. I was listening to it, and I was transcribing it into notes on a piece of paper. He said, but it was likely written by my grandfather, my grandfather's grandfather, because all my family members were great classical conductors of the Vienna Orchestra going back 4 generations. Wow. And he said, this makes perfect sense to me, and so that kind of same thing, by me demanding it of my mind, I started coming up with ideas, and ideas after ideas. It got to the point my father said, "You're one idea away from bankruptcy, son." You've got to stop inventing things and start using the stuff that you've already invented that can make you money and take care of your family. And
something to be said about that, though.
That's
right?
awesome.
Yeah, certain truth of that for sure.
Some people can take on too much. And it can, it can definitely, if you take on too much, it's like, you know what, why don't you just do what you got going on right here?
Stay in your lane for a minute.
Stay in your lane for a minute, exactly.
Yeah. Stick with what makes money after a while.
Do you have a favorite thing that you do?
It's make people laugh, and it's healthy laughter. It's not the kind of laughter that is a cheap shot at anybody's expense.
Beautiful. Yep.
It's kind of laughter that you're just amazed that somebody spontaneously at the speed of light can think at under pressure and come up with those things. But that, I think that a lot of those traits come as a result of the genetic inheritance of personalities that were there hundreds of years before that person came into existence. Yeah, and when you put them into a relaxed state and their conscious mind is put to rest so their subconscious comes alive, it's just amazing what you can bring out of people. And the raw, dynamic, unrestrained release of ideas that come out of their head is just it's just priceless and just absolutely hilarious.
Do you have any like particular ones that have like stayed with you? Like, were some moments where like something you found either extra funny or just amazing or anything like that? Is there any highlights there?
We write the routines and we set them up, and then their personalities, their individual personalities, fill that void, and their interpretations of it. That's why you can do the same show. I mean, we have tons of different shows that we do, but the characteristics of their individual personality makes every show different.
Yeah.
You can watch the same routine night after night after night, and people's reactions, although in many cases they may be similar, their personalities really come out, and it's
So it never gets old.
No, that never gets old for me, and I've seen thousands. I worked with my father for 3,000 shows before I became professionally involved with it, and that was 3,000 shows professionally involved with him. But I did thousands of shows with him growing up as kids and just traveling the world, during summer holidays and stuff like that. But there's no two shows that are identical. It's like the fingerprint of a human being, a snowflake.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is a snowflake. Yeah. Well, honestly, I appreciate. I know you do. Like, we were both pretty pretty excited about even just to drive up here.
Yeah, we were getting to meet you. So this was this was really honor. We
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to seeing the show October 6th, Friday, October 6th. It's at the Dalhousie. Oh gosh,
Auditorium.
Dalhousie Auditorium. Thank you.
October 6th.
October 6th. Yeah,
I think that's a
it's
Saturday
a family
night,
event too.
Friday.
So you can take
Friday.
your young ones.
It's like you can bring. I mean, we've had the biggest rock stars come to that show. We've had Meatloaf on our stage.
Yeah.
We've had April Wine. We've had Lucy Arnez Jr. on our stage. We've had so many big stars,
ticket prices are very reasonable as well, guys. I mean,
we try to keep it family
I thought
priced.
It was really fair,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate that being a family. So,
well, it's an experience that'll last a lifetime. You'll never forget Reveen. You'll always remember the show.
Yeah,
and it's something that you don't have to be afraid of taking. I don't care if you're a rock and roller, or you're punk rocker, or you're a doctor, or a surgeon, or you'll just be amazed at the show. It'll change the way you think forever, and you'll never regret it.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd love to give you one final cheer.
Yeah,
cheers.
cheers.
Thanks so much, Ty.
Thanks,
It's been a
guys.
great
My
time.
pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.